In today's video, we're going to be creating two different cards that have the same look using different products. Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoy and are inspired to create. Let's get started. In today's video, we're going to be using a couple of different stamp sets from Sweet Miss Daisy Design. These are illustrated by Anna White. This video is for Saturday Morning Makes, which is hosted by Jill Norwood. I started out and I stamped her on some Express It blending cardstock, and I used Memento ink, which is an alcohol-friendly ink, and I just colored her up. There in the beginning you saw me use the Y markers. I thought I had my camera on, and I didn't. Oops. So, but the rest of it's in here, and I'm only going to color this one image. When you see the images later, same thing, same process. I think these little images are so sweet and cute, and they can fit for different, your more shabby chic. I think it could be bright and cheery. I think it could be vintage. I think these ones could be even used for mixed media. They're very darling, sweet stamp sets, and I could see using them in lots of different ways. And what I'm doing is I'm just working from my lightest to my darkest, since I'm using Express It cardstock. I find that if I start with my darkest, like I do on Nina Solar White, and work to my lightest, the lightest lift the darks too much, so I like working from lightest to darkest on this paper. And I just picked, some warm yellows. I've got a pink there, and I've got a blue-green. I want to have some fun with her outfit, since it has so many cute patterns. I wanted to use some, not super bright colors, but ones that are brighter, on the brighter side, and a little cheery. And then I'm coloring up her hair. I'm not gonna lie, her hair was a struggle because I think it's supposed to be curly, and I'm not great at coloring curly hair. So I just went in and tried to add some flicks in there for some hair texture and some different darker strands and lighter strands, and I think it came out okay. I'm not the best colorist. I have learned through watching videos on YouTube and the little bit that I learned in high school and art classes, and we only use colored pencils and pencils. And so the Copic coloring is something that I learned from watching YouTube videos. If you guys would like me to do a more extensive video on how I color, which there's no right or wrong way, I can do one that's slow and just break down coloring maybe an image. So let me know in the comments. And in today's video we are using Henny Penny. That's the one with this image here and the little hens. And then I used a sentiment from Sisters and Friends, which is her latest release. And I believe Henny Penny was from the last month's release, but they're all available on our Etsy shop. I'll link Anna's YouTube channel down below, and I'll try to link the Etsy shop. If not, if you go over to her channel, you should be able to get to the link there. And then with these little chickens, which I color, they could be probably colored as feathers on the top of their head, but I colored them combs, so it's a bunch of roosters if you color them that way, which typically only have one. But hey, it is a card. It's not perfect, and I think it came out really cute. And I'm just the head on the chickens, on the hens, I left lighter, and then I took the next couple of darker colors in that same blending family and did the body of the hens. And then I did a warm gray for the one that she's holding. And I'm going to fussy cut these, and I'm just going to show you cutting one. I use the scissors in my dominant hand, and I try to turn the paper more than the scissors. And you just go right up on that line so that you don't have any white border. And then I'm going to go along the outside edges with a black Memento pen. So if you're not going to color it, you could use any black felt tip. You might even try the Copic black, however, it will probably bleed more. And it just cleans up your fussy cutting, so if it's not perfect, it disguises that. So on this first one, what I'm doing is masking. I'm just using some post-it tape. You can use washi tape, you can use masking tape, and I'm just using the width of the tape that I have. And I'm going to mask it. And then I've got, I believe that's Peacock Feathers Distress ink. And I'm just blending that on. And I'm really just wanting a saturation of color in the center with a border. You could also go darker along the edges where it's masked and blend it in to where it's lighter, like a vignette. And I've done that before. It's very beautiful. But I was wanting to go with the same look that I have in the other card, which when we get to that one, I use different products. And so I wanted to show that you can get some similar looks if you don't have the products in your stash when you see a card. I know I always, when I'm inspired, I don't always go out and buy it. I'll look in my stash and see if I can make it. And if I have similar products, that's what I use. Most of the products that I have are not going to be new. They're older, but hopefully you've got them in your stash if you're inspired, or you've got something similar and you can make it work. Now this is a background stamp, and I'm using Distress ink. I'm going to ink it up, and Distress ink does not stamp clearly, but I go over it a couple of times, and that's okay. I didn't want a really bold, perfect line. It's okay that it's messy. I'm not doing anything with water or moisture for blending. So I'm just using it as for blending the background and then stamping with my background stamp. And then I am going to be putting my image on it. And Distress ink stays wet for a very long time. And I could see it actually pulled on top of my card, so I took my heat gun there and I was drying the ink. And then I'm going to attach that to a card panel that is, I believe, a quarter of an inch bigger. So it ends up being an eighth of an inch all the way around, but it's a quarter of an inch wider and taller. And then I look like I've matted up those, but that background stamp carries from the ink blending all the way out to the edges of that white cardstock. And then I'm laying her out because when I fussy cut those little hens, I cut their feet off. They're too fine, and I didn't want a white border, so this is how I do this. And you could do this too if you cut off a section that's very fine. So maybe you've got a balloon that you cut out and you didn't cut out the string, but you want the string. You just stamp it down, and then you take the fussy cut portion and you glue it over the top, and they're going to have feet again. And then I took out the chicken feet that was in that stamp set, and I'm only inking up the very center with not all the way to both edges because I just want it to be where the little chickens are. And then I'm testing to make sure that I like the way that looks and the placement before I glue her down, because I have to glue her down first because the chickens will be in the foreground. Otherwise, if I glued the chickens down first, she would be on top of them and they would be behind her and we wouldn't see how cute they are. I just have a big acrylic block that I put on top to rest so while it glues, well, while it dries. Words are hard sometimes. Plus, it's kind of, I don't know about you guys, I get nervous every time I do a voiceover. And my husband just walked through the door, and I don't like doing my voiceovers when he's in. Let me get back to the card, and then I'll tell you. Because Distress ink stays wet so long, you've seen me put the embossing powder on there before I stamped my sentiment, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to stick, and it did. So I'm glad I did that because I've done it before, and then I've got strays, and then I'm trying to brush it away and not brush the sentiment away. And I'm using an embossing Betty. I don't know what I was doing there. I didn't stamp my image. I acted like I already poured the embossing powder. But no, I get really nervous with these voiceovers. I feel like I'm not very entertaining. I try to tell you what I'm doing. I try to share a little bit about my life with you, and I try to make them informative. So tell me what you'd like. Do you like it if I share about my personal life? Do you like if I just stick to the card? Do you want me to teach you the techniques that I know? You know, I'm no pro, but I can teach you what I know. I learned from someone, and maybe you can learn something too. So there I put some fine detailed embossing powder on there and heat embossed it, and then I used my microfiber towel to wipe away the excess embossing powder. And then you saw that soft eraser. It's a really soft eraser. It's not abrasive. Or you could use one that you used for removing adhesive to help get rid of that powder, that embossing buddy powder, the anti-static tool. And then I'm just taking some Spectrum Noir glitter pen. It's clear. And I'm going over all of my images. And I did that partially because that embossing powder left like a haze on it. And it could partially be because that ink was not complete. I mean, it was dry, but I literally heat dried it and then moved forward. And then I'm taking some glossy accents that I put in this glue bottle I got from Michael's, and it's got a really fine detailed point on it. And I'm putting it on their combs, their beaks. I put it on what the little polka dots on her dress, which kind of look like cherries to me. And I think that just adds a little extra touch because you can really see it when it dries. And then I took a hard enamel embellishment that I got from Joann's during Valentine's time. And here we're working on the second card, and this is some paper that I had that has like a linen finish. So you've seen me stamp that down with VersaFine Onyx Black ink so that I could heat emboss it. And I did use my anti-static tool again. And then I'm doing the same thing with the Friends sentiment. And I'm going to heat that embossing powder up and melt it. And then I'm going to fussy cut this word because these stamp sets do not have dies. But if you don't like fussy cutting, you could just put it in a banner. You could stamp it to the card. The only thing that's really different about these are the sentiments. But I think when you see this card completed, you're going to see how similar they are with different products. Like the image itself, the sentiment, they're, I mean, they're different. The sentiments are different, but the main image is the same. But everything else is different products, and they have very similar looks. Now, I had a little rough edge there, and so I took a nail file and filed it out. And then I'm taking my bone folder, and that's like a mouse. It's a desk pad, like a giant mouse pad. And so it has some give to it. And I take it and I go along the edges, and it kind of rounds them over to make it look like it was die cut versus fussy cut. And you can do that with any of your fussy cut images. And then I die cut this heart, this background piece here, this panel here with the cutout hearts and the piercing. And I was lining up my images, making sure I like that. I'm stamping out the little hens, and I'm heat clear, same thing I did with the sentiments on the other ones. I fussy cut. I did the outside. Everything's the same. And so I'm going to glue her down. And this is going to go onto some pattern paper that matches it that I had in my stash. It's, I think, an old die cuts with a view paper that I've had for a long time. And then I also have a teal blue card panel in the back so that you can see that. And I'm trying to find the placement of how I want the sentiment. And you tell me if you would have picked different. If you would have done it like any of those that I showed, which one you like the best. And then I'm just going to glue this down to my card panel. And I already glued the tealish background, the pattern paper, which has stitching on it, and it's a teal color that matches that blue paper. And then I'm weighting that down. We're getting everything glued together. And then I'll show you these side by side so you can see that they have the same look, similar style, but we just use different products. And this is a 5x7, and I chose to do that because of the side, that die cut behind her, that frame panel there. I chose to do a 5x7 so that it fit it better, where the other is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's your A2 size. And what is a 5x7? Is it an A5 or A7? I'm not sure. And then I'm using the Spectrum Noir clear glitter pen, but I'm only doing it on the flowers and the polka dots, and I put a little bit on her cheeks too. Same thing, glossy accents there, and I'm just doing the dots, what look like little cherries to me. And then I did the buttons on her shirt and the beaks of the combs on the chickens. And here they are side by side. So here's the first one. And then I'm going to show you the second one that we made. See how they have very similar looks? And I thought that background stamp emulated the stitching on the pattern paper. Thanks for spending some time with me, guys, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. Bye.